Okay, today's daf is Lamed Hey. We're going to start on Lamed Daled Amud Bet. The new Mishnah, Hevi'uhu lebeta parva ubakodesh hayta. So this is coming to the second Tevilah of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol has now done the Tamid service, as we read in the previous dapim. And now that he's completed the Tamid service, he's going to start doing the first things that really relate to Yom Kippur itself by going into the Big Day Lavan. So he comes into the Beta Parva, which was a chamber where he would go to the mikveh ubakodesh hayta. It was on the precinct of the Bet. It was within the grounds of the Bet HaMikdash. Parasus sadin shel butz beno levenam. They spread out a linen kind of curtain between him and the people so that nobody would look when he was going for Tevilah. And of course he went and he immersed. So kidesh yadav v'raglav. First he washed his hands and feet, upashat, and then he took off the clothes. What did he take off? The golden clothes. Then he dips in the mikveh, then he comes out, puts on the white clothes, and washes again. But Rabbi Meir Omer, as we learned a couple of pages ago, Rabbi Meir disagrees and says, pashat kidesh yadav v'raglav yarad v'taval. According to Rabbi Meir, according to the machlok between Chachamim and Rabbi Meir that we went into a lot of detail with two dapim ago, was what do we say? When does he do the first kiddush yadayim v'raglayim? Remember, according to the Chachamim, he does it while he still has the big day zahav on. He washes his hands and he takes them off. Then he goes to the mikveh. According to Rabbi Meir, he takes them off, then washes his hands and feet, then goes to the mikveh. Right? That's what we learned last time. So that's the machloket here. He gets up, he dries off. Heviu lo bigdei lavan. They bring him the white clothes. Lavash v'kidesh yadav raglav. Everybody agrees that when it comes to the white clothing, he puts on the white clothing, and only then does he wash his hands and feet. Bashachar hayalovesh pelusin shel shenem asar maneh. In the morning he would wear pelusin. These are garments that come from Egypt, basically. Okay, garments from Egypt, fine linen from Egypt that was worth 12 maneh. Ben arbaim hinduyin shel shmona me'od zuz, which is the same as 8 maneh. So in the afternoon he would wear a garment that was from India, according to some of the Mefarshim. Some say Kush, Ethiopia, whatever it is, somewhere exotic. That was worth 8 zuz. The point is, here it says, 800 zuz, which is the same as 8 maneh. So the total, according to Rabbi Meir, the total cost of his garments, according to Rabbi Meir, was 20 zuz. 20 maneh. 20 maneh. Now, v'chachamim omrim b'shachar hayeloveh shel shmona asar maneh. In the morning, he wore 18 maneh, according to the rabbis. Ubein arba'im shel shenem asar maneh. So, according to the rabbis, his clothing was a little bit more expensive. Hakol shloshim maneh. Okay, all that comes to a total of 30 maneh. So that was the cost of his garments. Now, so this is Mishel. And he says, Elo Mishel Tzibur v'imrata losif mosif mishelo. This was what the community would provide for him if he wanted to buy even fancier, clothing, more expensive clothing. Then he could pay it from his own pocket. Now, there's a big machloket here. Most of the Rishonim understand this Mishnah as also talking about Yom Kippur. One of the challenges of Yoma is that occasionally we're talking about everyday Bet HaMikdash stuff, and sometimes we're talking about Yom Kippur. So most of the Mefarshim interpret this as, it's talking about the white garment that he wore on Yom Kippur. That the first half of the service, he wore the white garment of the morning, then he took it off, he went back into the gold garments, and when he puts it back on, he doesn't put the same garments back on. He puts on cheaper linen garments. Why? Because all he's doing is going back to retrieve the kaf and machta. He's going back in to retrieve what he left in the Kodesh HaKodashim, so he doesn't have to wear such fancy clothes for that. That's how most of the Mefarshim understand. The Rambam understands it as this is referring to the rest of the year. Okay, in other words, it's referring to all year round, that he would wear different clothing if he officiated in the morning than if he officiated in the afternoon. He would wear more expensive ones in the morning than in the afternoon. In any case, we come to the Gemara on Lamed Hey. Now the reason why this Amud is so short is because in the previous daf, there was a discussion of how they would heat the water to take the chill off of the water, I should say, for the Kohen Gadol to immerse on Yom Kippur. And it raised the issue of davar she'eino mitkaven. What happens when a melacha is done on Shabbat? Shelo b'mitkaven. It's not done with intent. It's not done with kavanah. It's accidental. It's incidental. And there's a very long tosafot that takes up the entire margin on Lamed Daled Amud Bet and most of the margin on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph that really it takes up a huge amount of text, and that's why the Amud on Lamed Hey is so short, because Tosafot is going through all these issues of Pasik Reshe, Davar Sheino Mitkaven, issues that relate more primarily to Hilchot Shabbat. We turn to the Gemara, My Parva. What is Parva? Why was this place, why was the chamber where the Kohen Gadol immersed called Parva? It wasn't because it wasn't meat and it wasn't dairy. No, that wasn't the reason. It was because Amar Rav Yosef, Parva Amgusha. Parva was an Amgusha. He was a mechashef. He was a wizard of some sort, who was, now according to what Rashi says here on the side, mechashef echad bena'ah, it was built by a certain mechashef called Parva. Now according to the Rambam in the Perusha Mishnah, he brings a different story, which is also alluded to in other sources, that actually what happened was that there was a certain wizard who dug a hole in the side of the Beit HaMikdash in order to peer through and see what the Kohen would do. He wanted to see the avodah of the Kohen, but he wasn't a Jew. He wanted to know what it was, because, as a wizard, he figured maybe the Kohen has, some kind of like magic rituals I could learn about. I don't know why. But he peered in, and they caught him doing that, and they killed him, according to one of the sources. And therefore, when they built the chamber in that spot, they named it after him, because that spot became famous for that guy, not because he built it. Because why would an Amgusha, why would they let a wizard or some kind of person doing occult things build part of the Beit HaMikdash? Of course not. But because it became famous for that guy, because he was caught there and killed there. In any case, that's what it's named after. Parsus Sadin Shalbutz, Mai Shina Shalbutz. Why did they have to make a linen curtain for the Kohen? Why couldn't they just get a cheap curtain? Why did it have to be linen, the curtain that they put around the mikveh when he would immerse? Amar Rav Kana says, so that it's clear that the avodat hayom, that the service for Yom Kippur, the special service, the service that is particular to Yom Kippur, is going to be done in bigdei lavan, in bigdei butz, in linen, white linen garments. So therefore, white linen was the theme, you could say. Like bar mitzvah, it has a theme. White linen was the theme of the Yom Kippur service, so they used white linen. In the morning, he would wear, according to the Chachamim, Egyptian linen that was worth 18 maneh, expensive stuff. Vetana minyana, and the atalash ma'inan. So the question is, Vetana minyana atalash ma'inan. Why does the Tana have to tell us numbers? In other words, we can do math. We know that 18 plus 12 equals 30. So why do the rabbis have to tell us that he had 18? He had an 18 maneh outfit in the morning and his 12 maneh outfit in the afternoon. That equals 30. I think we can all do arithmetic, right? We know that equals 30. So vatana minyana atalash minan. Does he have to come to tell us the minyan, the number? Hakamash malan the betzir mehani lo navid. It's to tell you that less than this, in other words, this is the minimum value that these garments have to have, is 30 maneh. But if, for example, the morning garment was 17 maneh and the afternoon was 13, instead of the morning being 18 and the afternoon being 12, as long as it equals 30 and the morning one is slightly more expensive than the evening one, it's okay.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it would be a lot of money.
30 maneh is, because of zuz, is what?
No, it's not worth much today, but...
I know,
but if you think of how much they used to give for a ketubah, they would give, 200 zuz. That was considered, a lot of money.
And how many?
And this is, and a maneh is 100.
Is 100
zuz,
so
yeah.
So that's.
So if you're talking.
So.
It's 13. You're talking. Let's say 3,000 zuz.
Right.
Which is significantly more.
So you're talking like
what you give. It's like 15 times what you give a woman in a ketubah.
This would be like $5,000.
It's more.
Oh, more,
way more.
A lot more.
No, if you adjust for inflation, you have to say that what they used to give in a ketubah was about a year's worth of support. Oh. So for a year's worth of support, let's say,
so
right, and this is 15 times that.
Oh,
so we're talking about a big. It's expensive.
Like $100,000.
It's expensive.
Wow.
Okay. So, but anyway, the total number has to be kept even. Only but the ratio can be different. So as long as it adds up to 30, and the earlier one is more valuable than the later one. In other words, the one used in the morning is more valuable than the one used in the afternoon, then we're good. So Amar Ravuna. So, but still, Tichule Alma Mihad, everyone agrees the Shachar Adife, that the morning one has to be superior. So Minalan, how do we know that? Amar Ravuna Bered Rav Ilai, because Ravuna says that Ravuna, the son of Rav Ilai, says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Bad. it says bad 4 times. It emphasizes, right? Right? It says 4 times, bad. That emphasizes muvchar babad. It has to be the best linen you can get. Expensive stuff. We turn to Daf Lamed Hey Amud Bet. Maybe there is an objection. It says, when it describes the Kohanim, okay, this is a pasuk that's coming to us from Yechezkel. It describes the Kohanim, and it talks about how they would change their garments, and they would wear different ones. And they would not go out and greet the people in their holy garments, meaning once they were done with the avodah, they would go into bigdei chol, regular clothing. But still, the question is, what does it mean that they would change into bigadim achirim? My lav achirim chashuvin mehen. Doesn't it mean that in the morning they would serve in the Beit HaMikdash in a certain set of clothing? Then they would change into a better set of clothing, bigadim achirim. But they wouldn't wear those out to see the people. So that implies that the later ones were the better ones. He goes up. So the Gemara answers, Lo, achirim pechutin mehen. Achirim means other ones, inferior ones. He wore the best ones in the morning. Tane Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Rav Huna bar Yehuda taught va'amre la Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. Some say it was Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. Achar shekalata avodat tzibur. As soon as the avodah of the community is done, kohen she'aseta lo imo ketonet lo v'shah v'oved ba'avodat yachid. As soon as his mom gives him, if let's say his mom gives him a nice tunic that she made just for him, he can wear it. V'oved ba'avodat yachid. And he can do an avodat yachid. As long as he transfers ownership of this tunic to the community. In other words, he has to wear communal bigadim. It would be like, let's say you're in the army, and your mom says, you know what, you're going into the army, but I want you to wear something that I sewed for you. So I'm going to sew you a regulation, proper uniform. I'm going to make it myself, but it's going to be regulation. So in other words, that's what the Kohen's mother says. I'm going to give you an exact tunic, what you need. It's going to be, but I want it to be mine. I want it to be from me. I'm going to make it really nice and with the best quality stuff. And so,
returning to this,
Sheyim Serena, he has to hand it over to the tzibur. In other words, he can't wear his own personal clothing. He has to wear something. So if his mother gives it to him, he has to give it to the tzibur. Say, this belongs to the community now, and I'm wearing it. Now, this is a very interesting thing, because this Gemara, the pshat of this Gemara, supports Rambam very clearly. Why? Because it says that when does the Kohen have to wear the government-issued Bigdei Kehuna? When he does avodat tzibur, communal avodah. When he does avodat yachid, a personal avodah, in other words, an individual wants him to do a korban. It's not communal korbanot. You come with a korban. He has his own personal korban. Then he can wear his own tunic. Okay? So wait a second, on Yom Kippur, what avodat yachid is there? In other words, if this whole discussion about what clothing he wears in the morning and afternoon is talking about Yom Kippur, which tunic does he wear in the morning, which ketona does he wear in the afternoon, so then how could it be Yom Kippur? What avodat yachid is there? So Rashi, you could see, is bothered by this. What does he explain avodat yachid to mean? He said,
I don't understand what he's bothered by. If it's Yom Kippur, then it's communal.
But what avodat yachid do you have? Why is the Gemara here talking about, if the discussion here is about Yom Kippur, and the garments that the Kohen wears on Yom Kippur?
Why are they even bringing up?
Why would you mention avodat yachid? Oh, he only has to wear the clothing that was issued, the linen that was given to him. We're talking about the linen that was given to him. He only has to wear it when he does avodat tzibur. If he does avodat yachid, a personal avodah, he doesn't have to wear it. But it is a problem because if this whole Mishnah is talking about Yom Kippur, of course he only wears it on Yom Kippur. When I know. So of course it's only on avodat tzibur. What avodat yachid is there on Yom Kippur? So Rashi.
But even if you're talking about Yom Kippur, you can contrast it with the other.
But he's not. But the point is, this is talking about the Mishnah. It's talking about the Mishnah said that he gets a tunic of linen for Yom Kippur, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Fancier one in the morning, less fancy in the afternoon. That's what the Mishnah, according to most of the Rishonim, that's talking about Yom Kippur. So why are you telling me, well, he can wear his own, even more expensive, but only for avodat yachid? What avodat yachid? So Rashi is bothered by that. So what does he say? Hotza'at kaf umachta. What is it talking about? Taking out the implements that he left in the Kodesh HaKodashim after he went into the Kodesh HaKodashim. That's called avodat yachid. Why? Rashi says, because he says, Ella lafi, because it says, Sheinat tzricha letzibur, Ella lafi shemutelet alav lefanot et hamakom. That it's not really a communal need, but it's his personal responsibility to clean out the area. In other words, it's like if you play with toys, you have to clean them up afterwards. We say to the Kohen Gadol, you left stuff in our Kodesh HaKodeshim, please go pick it up, right? So it's his personal obligation. So that's why it says, Avodat Yachid. In other words, the way Rashi is understanding the Sugya here is that when it's talking about the fancy clothes of the Kohen, that he's allowed to wear the one his mother made him in the afternoon, that means he can wear it on Yom Kippur afternoon to go take out the kaf umachta, to go take out what he left in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because that is called Avodat Yachid. According to the Rambam, all of this is not an issue, because according to the Rambam, all of this discussion about linen tunics and the price of the linen tunic and whether his mother can make him a linen tunic is talking about all year round, not just on Yom Kippur. So an Avodat Yachid could exist. So that's just interesting that the Rambam seems to be supported by this. Amru alav al Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom. They said about Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom, as we're going to see later on in the Gemara, was extraordinarily wealthy. That his mother made him a ketonet, made him a tunic from 20,000. Okay, 20,000 maneh. Could you imagine 20,000 maneh? You give a woman for a ketubah, right? For a woman, right? But you give a woman for a ketubah 2 maneh. That's what you give in a ketubah, 2 maneh. This is 10,000 times what a person would cost for.
It's so expensive, though. I mean, you're talking like close.
She got the finest, right? Finest linen, right?
How do you make linen?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Even if you give it to the stock market,
I have no idea. Okay, so but. But they wouldn't let him wear it. Why? Because you could see through it. It was too see-through. The linen was too fine. Really? Could you see through it? But the master said, the string, in other words, of this fabric was doubled 6 times. In other words, it was 6 strings intertwined into each thread, really was made of 6 fibers. So that seems very thick. How could you see through it? The answer is because just like you can see through a glass, right, that there's liquid in it, even though the glass is very thick, even though this fabric is thick, it's still not opaque, right? It's still translucent, right? You could still see through it, and therefore they wouldn't let him wear it, even though it was really expensive. So I guess he had to wear it to parties. This is a very famous, very, very famous Agadah. That when a poor person, a rich person, and a wicked person come to judgment, to the poor person, they say, why didn't you study Torah? They ask the poor person. If he tells them, listen, I was a poor guy, I was too busy trying to make a living, and I didn't have time. So omrim lo, they say to him in heaven, were you more poor than Hillel? Amru alav al Hillel zaken. They said about Hillel the elder, every day he would go to work. A bit tarpa'ik. Okay, he would get 1 coin for his work. Chetzio haya noten l'shomer bet midrash. Chetzio leparnasato, leparnasat anshe beto. And the other half he would give to his family. In other words, half of it he would pay for admission to the Beit Midrash, half of it he would give to his family. Now, from this, we're gonna see why Hillel was not in a kollel system. Listen, Aaron, this is very important. Hillel did not believe in the kollel because look what he did. One time, he didn't make money. What happened? He didn't make enough money that day. In other words, what did he do? Whatever money he made, where did it have to go? Only to his family. So he didn't have enough. It doesn't say he didn't have enough money. Leparnasat beto. In other words, he made enough money. Whatever money he made, he gave it to what? His family first, and then he couldn't get into the Beit Midrash. He didn't give it to the Beit Midrash and then go asking other people to pay for his family, right? It's the other way. So he went and gave money for his family, and he didn't have enough money to go in. So alav v'nitla, he went and hung himself, not in the bad way. He suspended himself. V'yashav al pi arubah. And he stood he was hanging on the skylight. Kadeshi Yishma, Divrei Elohim Chayim Mipi Shemaya V'Avtalion. This is a famous story, of course. So he could hear the words of the living God from Shemaya V'Avtalion. Amru Oto Hayom, Erev Shabbat Hayat, Kufat Tevet Hayta. Many people have pointed out on the internet that we're reading this daf as in the middle of the month of Tevet. It is snowing in Jerusalem right now, right? And it's a Friday, right? Many people pointed out. It's Erev Shabbat today, and it's Tevet, and it's snowing in Jerusalem. And V'yarad alav sheleg min hashamayim. And snow started to come down. Kishala amud hashachar, when dawn came of the next day, in other words, Shabbat morning, all Shabbat night, he's frozen in the snow. He has hypothermia for sure. They come in. So the next morning, Amar lo Shemaya Avtalyon. Shemaya said to Avtalyon, Avtalyon achi, b'chol yom habayit me'ir v'yom afel. Every day it's light in here. Why is it so dark? Shema yom me'onanu. Maybe it's cloudy. Hitzitu einehen v'ra'u dimut adam baruba. They saw the form of a person at the window. In other words, in the skylight, they saw that he was blocking the light. So what did they do? Umatzu alav rum shalosh amot sheleg. They found 3 amot of snow piled onto him. So parkuhu ve'erchitzuhu. They took him off, washed him, v'sichuhu. They anointed him, v'oshivuhu keneged hamedura. They put him next to the fire. Amru ra'oi zeh lechalel alav et Shabbat. They said, this person is worthy of having Shabbat desecrated for him. What does it mean? So what's the point of the story? Don't say I'm too poor. Look at what Hillel did. The self-sacrifice that he worked so hard, and he did anything with even taking half of his money, okay, to be able to learn. He would make any sacrifice, and look at the extent that he went to. And of course, that's how he became discovered as a great Talmid Chacham, because of that sacrifice that he made. So that's the ani. Ashir omrim lo, with the rich person, they say to him, why didn't you learn Torah? Ashir hayiti v'tarud hayiti v'nichsai. Of course, what's he going to say? Listen, I was a rich man, I was busy with my business. Omrim lo, they say to him, Klum ashir hayita yoter me Rabbi Elazar. Were you more wealthy than Rabbi Elazar? Because Amru alav Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom. How did this? Now you could see this Agadah came here because it mentioned Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom, who was a Kohen, and his mother made him a tunic, right? So now it's mentioning he was so wealthy. Sheiniach lo aviv elef ayarot. His father only left him 1,000 cities by Yabasha, only 1,000 on the land. Ukenegdan elef sfinot, and only 1,000 boats. Bayam uvchol yom vayom notel not shel kemach al ketefo. And nonetheless, every day he would take a container of flour on his shoulder, and he would go from city to city and from province to province, to learn Torah. In other words, even though he was as wealthy as anybody, he still just took the minimum amount he needed for food for the road, the flour that he needed, put it on his shoulder, and went to learn Torah. Once he came to a city that actually belonged to him, ironically, and they saw him, and they forced him into work. Why? Because they thought, oh, you live in this city. This city is owned by Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom. Anybody who comes here, we press them into labor, right? So they didn't recognize him. They didn't realize he was Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom. They thought he was just a regular guy who lived there. So they're like, hey, why are you not working? So he said to them, Amru lahem, so he said back to them, Amar lahem, bevakasha mikem, please, hanichuni ve'elech lilmod Torah, leave me so I can learn Torah. Amru lo, Chaye Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom, by the life of Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom, shein manichin otcha, we won't let you. In other words, they got in a fight because they didn't recognize him. So they were like, and who did they swear by? His own name. They didn't know who he was. They didn't realize he was the one who owned it. He owned all the stuff. So, what does that show you? He would sit, he never saw them. In other words, the fact was he never went to see his nechasim. He never went to look at his business. He had everybody managing it, and what did he do? He sat and he learned Torah all day. So obviously they didn't know who he was. They didn't have any way of seeing a picture of somebody back then if they hadn't seen him. So they didn't recognize him. And then, last but not least, Rasha Omrim Lo, the wicked person, we say to him, why were you not learning Torah? He said, listen, I'm a very handsome guy, and I had a lot of women chasing after me. So Omrim Lo, they said to him, Klum na'e'item Yosef, are you better looking than Yosef? Amru alav al Yosef atzadik b'chol yom v'yom hayta eshet Potifar mishadaltu badvarim. It says about Yosef that every day the wife of Potifar would try to convince him, Begadim shelavshalo shacharit lo lavshalo arvit. The beautiful outfit she would wear in the morning wouldn't be the same one that she wore in the evening. In other words, she was always changing her clothes, trying to get his attention. Begadim shelavshalo arvit lo lavshalo shacharit. Whatever she wore the night before, she wouldn't wear in the morning. Okay? So she was always trying to entice him and attract him. Amralo, she said to him, Hishamali, listen to me. Amarla, he said to her, Love, no. Amralo, she said, Hareni chovashtecha bevet asrin. I'm gonna make sure to get you in jail if you do. Put you in jail if you don't do it. Amarla, he said to her, Hashem matir asurim. God is going to free me. Hashem is the one who frees you from imprisonment. So then she said, Harini kofefet komatecha. I'm going to bend your straightness. In other words, I'm going to break you. I'm going to really break you. What does he say? Hashem's okef kefufim. Don't worry, Hashem will straighten the bent person. Hareini misameat einecha, I'm going to blind you. Hashem pokeach ivrim, Hashem will open my eyes. In other words, Yosef really had a faith in God that she couldn't hurt him. Natnalo elef kikurei kesef, she gave him 1,000 talents of silver, lishmo eleha, in order to listen to her. In other words, lishkavetz la. So, and he still didn't, lishkavetz la liotima, velo ratza lishmo eleha. And regardless of the fact that she even bribed him with big money, he wouldn't take it. Now the two words say lishmo. It says lishkavetz la lihyot ima. What do those words mean? Lishkavetz la ba'olam hazeh. That means in this world, lihyot ima la'olam haba, to be with her in the next world. In other words, he realized what is that drash trying to say by saying lishkavetz la lihyot ima? It means if you were to lie with this woman, you would be with her. In other words, it means you would be her type of person. You're lowering yourself to be her type of person if you do it, so don't do it. Nimtza Hillel mechayev et ha'aniyim, Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom mechayev et ha'ashirim, Yosef mechayev et ha'rashaim. So it turns out that Hillel is mechayev, he obligates the poor people, because despite his poverty, he learned a tremendous amount of Torah and became a gadol b'Torah. Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom obligates all of the rich people. They can't use wealth as an excuse, because you see that even this extremely wealthy person who was so wealthy, we can't even believe it. It's unimaginably wealthy. He didn't involve himself in his wealth. He let it work. He let it be managed independently, and he studied Torah. And finally, Yosef is a person that shows you. Right. So, and in Shemaim, yeah. And Yosef is mechayev the Rasha, because the Rasha will say, "Listen, I had so many temptations, and I couldn't resist." Nobody got more temptation, more pressing, more pressure to succumb to temptation than Yosef, and yet he was able to withstand it and not listen to Potiphar. How do you end it?
Oh no.
Oh, did it stop? No.